You're watching the 2022 Conversations of King. Give Us the Ballot, presented by NewCORE and WHYY.
Introduce our panelists and then we'll jump right in. First, Mr. Abu Edwards is one of the co-founders of Millennials in Action and a political consultant. Saj Purple Blackwell is the founder of PQ Radio 1 and a member of WHYY's News and Information Community Exchange. Reverend Gregory Holston is a UMC itinerant Philadelphia pastor and a thought leader and political pundit in his own right. And last but certainly not least, Miss Brittany Smalls, one of the preeminent voices in the Black Voters Matter movement and now a regional director for One PA. Welcome to all of you and good afternoon. So I want to start with just, reflecting on that speech. I mean, I saw Reverend Holston, you getting really, emotional as you heard the remarks of Dr. King. So I'll start with you and I'll go to each one of you. And I want you just to give me one word. And then after you say that one word, I'll give you 60 seconds to elaborate. But the state of our democracy is what? Reverend?
Tenuous. First, for those who understand history, they know that we're at a moment in time that's been very similar at other points in our history. The recognition that our Constitution itself calls African-American people 3/5 of a person, and at the same time set a structure in place for election and representative government, sees a contradiction of what is, for some, a document of democracy, but also at the same time, a document of white supremacy. And these tensions have continued throughout our history. And we see it rising today, has been rising in stronger ways ever since this country, through a coalition of Black and brown and progressive white, dared to put an African-American man in the office as president of the United States. And the opposition, through the Tea Party and other forms, have coalesced the white supremacist thinking, which has always been present, is now become more manifest and more blatant and more out front than probably in the last 50 years. And so it's tenuous because, as one Republican leader said, the Republican Party has become radicalized and has dared to think of pushing its agenda in ways other than democracy, using whatever methods that they believe will get them what they want, which is a white supremacist government, and wants to block what is bound to happen simply because of demographics. Finally, a multiracial, multi-ethnic nation being led by people of all colors.
Thank you for that, Reverend.
What's at stake?
Thank you. Brittany, the state of our democracy is what?
Grappled. I say that because when you think about a fair democracy, we think about freedom and equity. And in 2022, we are basically fighting for basic human rights, fair voting laws. So we're definitely in a place where everybody should be concerned.
And I just want to be clear, you said grappled or crippled?
Yeah, grappled.
Grappled,
which means
struggle. Okay. Yes. So we have tenuous and we
struggling. And
it's grappled. Saj Purple Blackwell, the state of our democracy is one word and then expound on that.
My one word is the state of our democracy is exhausting. Okay. And I'm one, as people know, I'm going to keep it all the way real with everyone on this panel and around the world. I'm exhausted. Do you understand that we've been fighting for the same exact rights since before 1957, and this great speech about giving us the ballot? Today, in 2022, supposed to be the millennium, we are still fighting for voter rights. We are still fighting for you to stop taking my right to vote by trying to chop them down and disenfranchise my people. I'm exhausted that this is a 100-year fight, a 400-year fight. And still today, in this technical world that we live in, where technology is everything, we're moving to the future. We can't even move the future from voting. You're still trying to disenfranchise my people? I'm exhausted.
Wow, thank you for that. I mean, I hear you. I mean, it's quite the juxtaposition to think about moving into the future with some of the advancements we're making in technologies. We're talking about flying cars and voting rights in the same conversations. It's really hard to think about that. So we have tenuous, we have grappled, we have exhausted. Brother Abu Edwards, the state of our democracy is what?
I mean, it's a struggle. And I know that's a very, very clean term, but it's a struggle. When we have Republicans around the country who've been introducing legislation to prevent Black people and BIPOC people of color from voting, it's a struggle. There's a famous scripture, there's nothing new under the sun. We've been through this. This is nothing new. It's new to some, but it's not new to others. And I think that, right now we're in a struggle moment where, people need to understand the true meaning of voting and the power that Black people possess in this country. Dr. King had it right. We can put our own judges on the bench. We can put our own governors in the governor's mansion. We can put our own senators in Harrisburg or in the state capitol buildings, but we must understand the importance of our vote. So even though we're in a struggle right now, I truly believe that there's a brighter day to come.
Brittany, this is a question for you, but I'll go around the horn again. I was asked this question, and I want to ask it to you all. How do you balance this fight and the need to communicate voting rights to the public and to the media, and even sometimes to yourself, right, to motivate yourself, but at the same time in a city like Philadelphia, where there's so much voter apathy, where on average we're getting 10 to 17% of people turning out, what do you say to those who say you guys are fighting for voting rights for the people who don't even want to vote? And then how do you communicate to those who are apathetic that the fight that you're fighting is worthwhile?
Great question, Chris. And I think that it's not as much of a struggle for me because I'm in it. Some people are looking at it from a microscope, and it you try to do your synopsis about different communities and why things are the way they are. But I truly understand because I grew up in a systematic racism where schools were underfunded. I grew up in a neighborhood where, violence was prevalent because we didn't have the things and the tools to survive within our communities and to thrive. And so it's not hard for me to express why our people have to choose some of not participating in the process because they're making life-changing decisions. During the pandemic, kids were home and they were doing virtual school. I knew a person who had 4 children, 1 laptop. And so she was fighting for, more assistance from the school district of Philadelphia to get more resources to take care of her kids. So if you think about that, this mother trying to care for her children, and then you talk about, the issues that are going on around voting rights, it's going to be a struggle to try to get them to participate. But my objective is not to sway anybody. I just want them to understand that their power will be in this place. This is one tool. It's not the whole picture, but it's one tool to get us in the right direction if we can just see it from this perspective. And I think we're moving the needle forward because they see people like myself. They see people like Sajid, Abu, and Reverend Holston that, these are our lived experiences.
I appreciate that. I mean, but one of the things you said that was so profound, Reverend Holston, I'd like to get your reaction. Then I'm going to come to Abu and Purple. Is, you know, when we're trying to expand the tent, right, of people who participate in these movements, we're trying to increase the value of the voices, but at the same time create a collective voice. But how do you, you know, wrestle with that conundrum of there's some people who do not have the mental capacity to take on some of the social political burdens because they're just trying to survive. You and I, Reverend, have had conversations about the violence and people just trying to survive. How do you get them to care about one more thing?
Yeah, I think we have to be very appreciative of where people are at and what they're experiencing right now and the level of poverty that exists in our community. Philadelphia is still the poorest big city in the country. But I think we have to point with hope that when voting is connected with organizing, and organizing is connected with a real agenda of what we want, that those three things come together over a period of time to create the change we want. I've seen change in this city over the last 7 to 10 years because people organized, had clear agendas, and elected people and put them in place, both in city government and state government, to actuate that particular agenda. So I've seen us begin to pull back in ending mass incarceration. I've seen us begin to free people who have been wrongfully convicted. I've seen us begin to organize and have hotels actually have unions, and now having wages that were once as low as $5, now is up to $20 or $25 or even $30 an hour. I've seen what organizing and on a clear agenda, pushing and then voting people in to effectuate that change can actually benefit people's lives. And we have to continue to keep saying that. It's not voting by itself. It's not voting for a president every 4 years, but it's voting every 6 months with a clear community agenda of what needs to happen.
Thank you for that, Reverend. Abu, one of the things I like and respect about what you do with Millennials in Action is I often see you getting the guys who larger society might call hard to reach or at risk. Or, you know, if we're speaking in colloquialisms, you know, corner boys, right? Or who appear to be corner boys. But you get them to canvass and door knock and you engage them in the process. How do you get them to do that? How do you convince them? What are the languages and the best practices you do to reach a particularly hard to reach demographic?
It's about leadership. And I think that's something that, you know, we have to continue to talk about. It's about leadership. The same way that I can be in the, you know, meeting with the governor, shaking his hand, talking about legislations, the same way I can be in the street, giving opportunities day by day and letting folks know that, you know, just because, you know, I'm at one place doesn't mean, you know, I forgot about this. What people don't understand is that all people want is a fair shot in life. And once we get through the underground, you know, what you look like, what your record look like, we understand that people are just people trying to make it in life and become productive members of society and just need an opportunity. It's not easy, you know, being an African-American male, growing up, you know, my father had 15 kids, never took care of neither one of them. My mother was a single parent. You know, leadership at a young age, you know, I became a safety in elementary school. And that's what saved my life. You know, if it wasn't for the safety, you know, me being a safety and me being the president of my high school and then going to Wilberforce University and being president of student government there, you know, I wouldn't even be in a space to go back to my community and give them something. One thing that, you know, that they understand is that Abu have been through the same path that you've been through. The only thing that's different between me and you is one decision. That's it. We grew up in the same drug-infested community. We grew up around the same broke-down schools. You know, we grew up around the same, you know, Miss Mary who sat on the corner and gave all the kids, you know, lemonade in the summertime. We grew up the same way. And a lot of people, they need to see people like us, you know, leading the fight. You know, I hate wearing suits, right? But I wear suits so I can go back in my neighborhood and let folks know that every Black man don't wear sagging. Every Black man don't sag. You know, it's okay to throw on a suit. This is the leadership. And I know that it's very, you know, well, how is that going to connect to voting rights? But we have to build love. I think when we talk about Dr. King talked about love, loving on your neighbor, loving one another. And right now, we don't have any love in this city. We can't talk about voting rights if we can't talk about love first. And when they can understand that someone loves them, cares for them, and is going to fight for them, then we're going to see a change in our community. But if they don't feel that, then everybody's out on their own. And that's what we have to talk about, Chris.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry, is it Reverend Abu? Or is it Brother Abu? Thank you for that, man. Saj Purple Blackwell, I mean, you, like Abu, are out on the corners, with your bullhorn on 52nd and Market Street, telling people when it's time to vote, registering. The same question to you is what's the language and that you use, but as Dawn McNeil put in the chat that I'm also very aware of, even if you are able to get past the point where someone does not have the physical or mental capabilities to wrestle with this, let's say they get it, right? Now they get that the vote is important, they acknowledge what you're saying, but now they're faced with what appears to be unyielding corruption that threatens them back into the place of apathetic. So how do you tell them, listen, back when I was going to church, they used to say, keep it vertical, stay focused on that one thing and not necessarily look at what's going on each side of you. What's the message to people who want to have that conversation, but then get so discouraged so easily into it because they see the headlines?
So I'll dial back and then dial forward. To dial back, I say that knowledge is power. And we can never forget that knowledge is power. So when civics was taken out of our educational system, it depleted our knowledge. We don't know that we have to vote every 6 months in Pennsylvania. We didn't know how important it is to vote or why we're voting. So as we took that knowledge away from our people, we disenfranchised ourselves from the power of understanding why you have to go vote. So because education and civics is not in our education system anymore, we have to dial back and become the teachers on the corner, right? So that's why I'm out there with my bullhorn saying, hey, you got to vote every 6 months. Hey, are you registered to vote? Because you're not getting it in school. You're not getting it at work. You're not getting it in this hustle. You have to get it from somewhere. So you have to get it from the people who love you, right? So our mission at Blackwell Culture Alliance, my husband, Thomas Blackwell, and I, we know that we believe in Whitney Houston. I believe the children are the future. It is so, and it is such a thing. So that the best thing that America could have did was amend the 26th Amendment to bring the voting age down from 21 to 18, because we know that our young people have the capacity to understand their power and their voice, which is because if they have the knowledge, they understand their power and they understand the power in their voice. So we have a Love by Vote campaign. Love, right? Because that is Dr. King's mission from the beginning to the end. It's about love, because if you love yourself, guess what? If you love your brown skin and you learn to love brown, then you'll love your brother across the street. You will never kill him because you love him if you were taught that love. So we have to re-engage our people with civics, with knowledge and love. So I encourage people I tell them, come on, love. We loving on you. We loving you. We empowering you with this love. And we're giving you the vibe, because when you love and you're on a higher vibration, your knowledge is high. And then when your knowledge is high, you're vibrating with the right knowledge, you will use your power to vote, to change your community first. The things that you need to change in your community, the education in your schools, the poverty in our streets. It comes from education, it comes from knowledge, it comes from love, and it comes from our fight on the ground. Love by vote.
Thank you. Thank you for that. See what I mean when I said this will pretty much moderate itself? By the way, Saj, I've moderated dozens of conversations, and some about voting rights. I think this might be the first one that Whitney Houston has ever come up in a conversation about voting rights. I didn't know where you were going. I was sitting on the edge of my seat. Let's get into what people are watching on the news today. And I'm going to go to Reverend Holston first and then to you, Brittany. People are waking up and they're watching Morning Joe. They're watching State of the Union with Jake Tapper on CNN. Maybe they're watching their local channels, and all they're seeing right now is, will the Dems get the votes to push past the filibuster? Will they even have the conversation about the debate to do the vote, right? And some people are feeling hopeless and apathetic, and they just aren't clear what their role is in this very moment, because it's being framed as this has to happen in DC before everybody else can necessarily get involved. The people who are watching today, the people who are going to watch this broadcast later, what can they do in this moment to push the needle forward?
Well, certainly all of the issues that we've talked about in terms of organizing, and that is really calling your senators, calling your calling your representatives, organizing on the ground to lift up the voice, the need to be able to pass these voting rights. I think the voting rights are fundamental. And while we have other pieces of legislation that are important, Build Back Better, it is the voting rights. King said in 1964, he said when the question was whether he go to Selma to push for voting rights or President Johnson wanted him to work and pass the war on poverty. He said, if we don't get the vote, we can't even really address poverty. And so all this fundamental issue is enough for us to use every means necessary to influence our government, which is all of the nonviolent tactics that the King taught us, to not only call our state reps and call our representatives and our senators, but dare to use nonviolent action to be before the Senate and before those in Washington, because the only way the voting rights bill got passed in '65 is because we dared to walk the Pettus Bridge and face the dangers there. It is all of us who know this as an issue that needs to begin to stand up on this right now, and demand the people that we got elected in the first place. This president would not have been elected without Black and brown people getting out to vote, to demand that this president push with all of his energy, with all the weight of the federal government behind him, use all of the tactics, hold back Federal Reserve resources from those senators who don't want to vote for what is fundamental, hold back the stuff from their states so they don't even get that stuff unless they vote for this. No, there's no President Mansion here. There's no president, whatever the other person's name is. They're not president. President Biden is the president and needs to start acting like the president and use every influence to get those senators in line and get them to vote for what is necessary for our nation.
Say amen, somebody. One of the things that I hear, Reverend, in that, and I get your reaction, Brittany, is, you know, a lot of times in geopolitics, we hear about America sanctioning another country for what they're doing to us. We sanction Russia. We put economic sanctions on places like that. I've never really heard what Reverend Holston has just talked about, which is placing economic and social sanctions on states that are voting to restrict them. When you hear that idea, does that resonate with you? That's for you, Brittany.
Oh, yeah, yes, definitely, of course. I think about the gentleman in, I don't want to get this mixed up. I think it's Colorado, where he was being sentenced because of an accident that happened with the truck drivers. He was, in an accident that killed some people, a very unfortunate accident, and he was a Hispanic gentleman and given like a crazy amount of time, like hundreds of years in prison, which was an accident. But those truck drivers afford this gentleman, and they blocked resources from coming into the state, and they band together, and there were some changes made because of them, the camaraderie. So I think that when we're thinking about moving forward and the changes that we want to see in this government, we really have to have the mindset of how we can stick together and put our differences aside. I think sometime, just to be fully transparent, we may not see the whole scope of the picture in the same way. But when we see something that's very detrimental and critical to what's happening in our society, we had to stay together and band together to stop this, because we were bamboozled. We were bamboozled in this last election. We gave everything, our blood, sweat, and tears. There were a lot of sleepless nights for a lot of us. We wanted to make sure that we got this maniac out of office, which we succeeded. But at the same time, there were promises made from this current administration that's not being withheld. And it's very disgusting and it's disheartening to the folks that have put the work in, and even the everyday folks. Like, it's just, I'm just like disgusted. Like, as Purple Queen said, we're exhausted, and I don't really have too many words because it's like we're fighting every day. I think about the founders of Black Voters Matter movement, Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright. They have been putting pressure on this administration since the onset, every day, going back and forth to DC every day. And, we need others to join into this fight as well. Like, we need to tell them in the filibuster, but at the same time, I don't know if they are hearing us. I mean, that's not going to make us stop, but I'm just saying, I just don't think that they're hearing us. I think they have a pre-planned agenda and we need to expose it, whatever it is.
Thank you for that. Abu, when we talk about expanding and bringing more voices into the conversation, in some places, this has been framed, this conversation about voting rights is explicitly a Black and brown issue. Is that how you see it, Abu, or is this an issue that affects people across the country and that white folks, non-Black folks should be participating and as equally outraged and is equally exhausted as Purple, Brittany, and the Reverend?
Well, you asked like 2-3 questions at once, so I'm gonna try to do my best, Chris. Voting rights, this is not a fight just for Black and people of color. This is a fight for everyone. Any barrier that is put in the way to prevent people from voting is a problem. Right now, based on the census data, especially in the city of Philadelphia, we're pushing, the city commissioner's office, which they'll already be doing that. Thank you to Commissioner Daly, to have Chinese as a language for our voting machines, and that's what we call equity, and that's just the beginning. We got to move forward. If we continue just to protect the rights of Black people and BIPOC people, then we're losing out on the bigger picture. This is never, when Dr. King led the fight, Dr. King wasn't just trying to make things fair for just Black people. He was trying to make fairness for humanity. And everybody coming together. To add, like we have a lot to do. We have just like Purple said, we have to get back to the fundamentals and we have to get back to the basics. If we're going to change the next generation, of educated voters and increase our voter turnout, then we have to make sure that we bring young people into the conversation. Because when we looked at our history, it was young people, millennials, who were leading the movement. Because they had a place. And when we, learn to put that back into the schools and to educate them and to make it an everyday life, then I don't see this changing, right? Like, let's be honest. Every few years, we're going to be having the same panel discussion about voting rights and making sure that voting rights get passed. And that's why this John Lewis bill is important. Because every 5 or 10 years, I'm tired of coming to these panel discussions, advocating for people, going to DC, calling my state senator, telling him why it's important for people of color, why they should vote. No, this should be rewritten in the Constitution, that Black people can vote, period. Let's just put it out there. People of color, everybody can vote. But until we get to that point, we have a lot of work to do. We have, just like Dr. King said, we have to hold our elected officials accountable. We put them in office. Then as we're talking about young people having that opportunity to educate themselves and have civics in classrooms, this is where we got to push our young people. This is where we got to push our elected officials for. We have to push our elected officials to work for us. And I truly believe that's what Dr. King was talking about when he says, give us the ballot. We have the authority and the power as people and as a voter. Our vote is more important than a handgun and a bullet. And we have to understand that that's the power. Our vote can change legislation that put more restrictions on purchasing guns. Our vote can change the operation of making sure that we have more funding going into Black and brown communities about mental illness. Our vote can change the opportunity to make sure that all schools are funded. It doesn't matter your tax bracket. It doesn't matter what zip code you live in. That's what our vote can do. That's what it can do. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, white, or Black. Our vote makes us equal.
Mic drop. Thank you. Thank you for that. Assange, I'm going to come to you in a second. Rev, I wanted to circle back because you said we wouldn't have had the Voting Rights Act in the first place without that walk in Selma, right? What does our 2022 Selma moment look like?
That's a good question. And what was powerful about Selma was that it was a medium that was broadcast on a medium that was still new to us, called television. And the use of television meant that the walk of Selma went where they literally interrupted broadcasts all over the nation for what was happening at Selma on that bridge. It means instantaneously 70 million people saw the brutality on that bridge that day. And so it was a marriage of movement and organizing with a new medium called television. I would say that whatever our Selma moment is, it's going to be a marriage of organizing and dramatizing our plight on this new medium called social media in a way that contacts and connects people in powerful ways that have not been connected before. So it won't look like Selma, but those who are on social media know those flashpoints where all of a sudden stuff is blowing up all over social media and everyone is talking about it. In that sense, our Selma is going to be that kind of moment which connects millions of people, not just in America, but in the world. But also, let me say this, Selma changed Lyndon Johnson's mind. Lyndon still had to go back and twist some arms in that Senate and in that House to vote for that bill. And Lyndon knew how to twist some arms. I don't want to compare presidents, but I need somebody who's going to twist some arms in the House and the Senate so they do what they're supposed to do to support voting rights for people. I don't want to hear no excuses that I can't change the filibuster any longer. I want to see those senators change their vote because the president made them do it.
Tap your neighbor, say, neighbor, twist the arm. Thank you, Rev. Purple, I got to ask you, the Reverend talks about marrying the movement with the media. You're somebody who does both, right? You're the Black World Cultural Alliance and you're out in the grassroots level, but you also have PQ Radio 1 and you're connected with WHYY. Talk about the ways in which you can see in this moment, the movement and the media marrying itself to create what needs to be a very a very impactful message, but also image.
Absolutely. And thank you, Chris, for that. So I think that what's important here is that we have to remember that Dr. King wasn't an icon. He was a prophet at the time, a teacher, at the time. And he was a superhero. But there were many superheroes in the story of the civil rights. See, there were many superheroes. And that's what we need to tap into. The many superheroes who are on the ground right now. And we have to organize the many superheroes, the Britneys, the Abus, the Reverend Halstons, the Floods, the WHYYs, the PQ Radio 1s. We have to bring those boots on the ground together to create this movement, a flash mob that we need to make change in DC. So when Reverend Halston, and let me, you need to, we can give you a word right now for thinking of sanctions for Senate in the House. That is something I'm willing to get behind and support, right along with bringing civics back into school. And right, because I'm Black and my people have struggled also bringing financial literacy back in our schools, I need to wrap that all up in one. All right. And then when we go to the streets with our message, we have to figure out what our children or what our young people care about, right? And then we have to break it down to how that affects their household. And then we have to figure out how to get them invigorated and so upset and so concerned that's how their household is being affected. So we have to trickle down the muddiness and let them know how politics affects us, which again is why citizens are so important. But the matter of today, right, like voting rights, it is being, our rights are being disenfranchised in many of the southern states. And now the southern states, now that they have been empowered by not forcing these voter rights to go through, they have now been empowered to try more stuff. So please know that this is just the beginning. Of where voter disenfranchisement begins. We need to begin to prepare our young people for what is coming down the line. We need to let them know that they are part of the solution. And then we need you to flash mob for this solution, It's how we reach out to them. And another thing is that, again, with Brother Reverend King, that message was like a once in a lifetime situation. So our young people think of that as, oh, that's back in the day. That happened, oh my God, so long ago. We need to let them know. We need to make it important. We need to make it news every day on what disenfranchisement is doing to our people every day. Like, did you know, the corner boy, did you know that your rights, if you haven't voted in the last 5 years, they're going to try to take you from being able to vote at all? Did you know? You know what I'm saying? So you will not, you might miss your next opportunity to vote for the next Barack Obama because you are not on the voting, tally, because you got removed because you were not voting. So again, information is key. So I challenge every internet radio station, every terrestrial radio station to change the narrative. Gun violence is super important and we need to fight it today and come up with a solution today. But our voter rights being snatched away from us again, this is a major, major, major problem that needs to be really blown up. And imagine if we were able to, every high schooler that turned 18 years old, for their high school, we had voter parties, voter registration parties to make them part of the process, to be proud, to utilize their power and the voice. I believe that things could change immediately if we organize in that way. Thank
you for that. I appreciate what I'm hearing from you, Purple, is it has to be even more ingrained into the culture and meeting people where they are, voting parties for when people turn 18, using the terminology flash mob and connecting it to their responsibility and the legacy of Black activism, I think is incredibly important. I want to use the last 4 minutes we have in this conversation here before we go to the breakout portion, which I'll be turning over to Reverend Dr. Marsha Brown Woodard. I want you all to think about, give us the ballot. We started with the state of our democracy is, and you guys filled in the blank, and we're going to end it with, give us the ballot and we will what? And I will start with you, Brittany. Give us the ballot and we will what?
Simply, we'll win. Give us the ballot and we will win for all people.
Amen and Ashe. Thank you for that. Abu, give us the ballot and we will what? You're on mute, good brother.
I'm sorry, I must have said that word too strong. I said, give us the ballot so we can be free. We're still enslaved when it comes to our ballot being locked up. That's our voice. So, give us the ballot so we can be free.
Give us the ballot and we will win. Give us the ballot and we will be free. Saj Purple Blackwell, give us the ballot and we will what?
Give us the ballot. We will take our power.
Thank you for that. Give us the ballot and we will win. Give us the ballot and we'll be free. Give us the ballot and we'll take our power. The Reverend Gregory Holston, give us our ballot and we will what?
And together we'll build the beloved community.
I appreciate that. Thank you all. Brittany Smalls, Regional Director for 1PA, Reverend Gregory Holston, UMC Itinerant Pastor, Abu Edwards, co-founder of Millennials in Action, and Saj Purple Blackwell, founder of PQ Radio 1, co-founder of the Blackwell Cultural Alliance. I've been your moderator for this portion of the conversation, Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, managing editor for community engagement. And it's my pleasure now to turn this over to Reverend Marsha Woodard.